So hello everybody and welcome to this really exciting webinar. I'm so pleased to have the guys and girls and the lovely people in general from Social Talent ask me to come and talk to you about how to attract those pesky passive candidates. Now I know everybody's talking about passive candidates and there's obviously active people out there looking for jobs, but people often say, actually Dave, we want the passive ones because that's where the quality is. So it's quite an interesting concept. So my name's Dave Hazlehurst. Some people know me as Google Dave, and I am a partner at a digital marketing agency based in the centre of the universe known as Liverpool, and we're called PH Creative, and we have a talent attraction agency called Ph.Attraction. Go and check it out. So the first thing here, these candidates, they don't really care about you. They don't really give a shit. Passive candidates ignore a lot of stuff. So all those emails you send out and all that spammy stuff that you do online to try and get their attention, they don't really give a shit. If you just think about how many things we see online, we see 10,000 links a day online. That's a lot. Think about, on your way to work today, how many billboards do you remember? Exactly, you don't really remember a few, do you? Exactly, because we don't remember them, we screen them out. As a marketeer, we are terrible at training people to screen out bullshit, so we have to work harder. And candidates now, or actually people, because they're passive candidates, they're just people in jobs that you'd like to attract and they're not even looking for a job, they don't really care. So what is it we can do to get their attention? And actually, how do we go about romancing them? And how do we go about bringing them towards us as a brand and maybe creating a desire or an action to make them think and go, do you know what? I wouldn't mind coming to work for you as an organisation. So what I thought to do is not just about how we come up with creative concepts, but I thought I'd walk through a process a bit that maybe if you watch this for about another 35 minutes, you can walk away and go, do you know what? Actually, there's a few real good takeaways here that if we have this, if we have a go and think differently, maybe we can start to attract passive talent, put them into a community and nurture them and romance them and create some desire. So the first thing is this model by Google. It's known as the ZMOT, the Zero Moments of Truth. And it's something that Google came up with in 2012, somewhere, I think it was around 2012, and primarily it was around the consumer world, so the B2C world and actually the B2B world. And what you can see on the screen there on the left is there's an initial stimulus. Something happens that makes that person go, oh, you know, what's that thing there, what's that? Or maybe they just start thinking about something and they jump online, they jump on the phone, they go on a desktop, they're on the tablet, they start searching around, and that's the zero moments of truth. The first moments of truth is when they buy the product, or it might be when they apply for the job. And the second moment of truth is when they actually get the product, they try it, they play with it, whatever it may be, or they start on the job. So what does the ZMOT look like in the world of candidates? So what it means is they're in research mode. Now there's a couple of things to bear in mind here. When they're in research mode, it might be that this passive candidate is not researching the job because they're in passive mode. But what it might mean is they're researching for something that's of interest to them, or something that's going to solve a problem that they may have, something that's on their mind in relation to maybe the job that they do, how they're doing self-development, or the challenges that they think might be coming their way. So they're Googling it and they're going on social media and they're going on lots of different sources and all that kind of stuff. And actually, just for the record, an active candidate spends between 2 and 6 hours researching. That's a lot of time, and they're looking on average at 14.5 sources of information. So that's an active candidate, but what is it the passive candidate is searching for? And how do we start to weave in messages to start to get their attention? So we're going to talk about that quite a bit, and then when we get their attention, how do we get them to convert? How do we get them to apply for the job and then actually start the job? And happy days, we've gone from passive through to active. So the ZMOT is something that is really important to consider, because we need to think, what are the type of candidates that we want? And then we need to think, okay, what is it they may go looking for that we can actually help provide answers to? that might then trigger their awareness of us as a brand and a future potential employer. So the first thing we need to do, we need to understand them. So there's lots of different things that we can do here. So the first thing is we need to walk in their shoes. So when was the last time you actually thought from behind the mask or thought about that passive candidate, said, okay, you know, what's important in their world? What would they go looking for? How do we go about understanding that? Well, what we do in the world of marketing is we spend a lot of time building personas. So they've been around since the 1960s. I've been talking about these things in the world of recruitment now, probably for about the last 4 years, and it still surprises me how many people and organizations don't actually even bother doing this. And it's absolute criminal if you don't do this, because my argument is, if you haven't built a persona, the archetype of what that person looks like that you want to connect with, how the hell do you know what they're worried about, what pain points they've got, what routines they've got, who influences them, where they go to learn? How do you know all these things? And then how do you know what you need to say to connect? Because it's just guesswork otherwise. So you really, really do need to think about building these personas. So this is an example of Chris the programmer. We did a load of work for BAE, and they need programmers and systems architects and people that write code for MI5 and MI6 and all this crazy stuff. But we really had to understand those individuals and understand what was important to them and how we help them with their pain points. How do we help them with their pain points? That then shapes the content that we might think about providing at ZMOT, at that 0 moments of truth. Here we have a typical marketing funnel. Now, in the world of marketing, we have funnels for everything. It's crazy. But here on the left, there's a typical persona. So you can see your persona there. And he's even got he's even in thinking mode if you look at him. And what we can see is a funnel. So imagine ZMOT now on its side. And we see see, think, do, delight. Now it's very, very similar to the IDA model. You may have heard of that. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's another funnel, and it's awareness, interest, desire, action. Now at different stages of the funnel, people have different types of questions on their mind. So at awareness level, or at the C level, as we can see there, it's like, what are the future challenges or pains that might be going on in my world, not just now, but also over there in the future? What might be changing in the world? Let's say it's cybersecurity or, you know, something techie. Well, a passive candidate might be looking at a lot, and I know they do this because we've persona mapped these people. They go looking for the latest ways of technology being applied into their world. They look for new ways of coding, and they go looking for this information. Okay, it's nothing to do with a job, but it's something that helps them in their job. Then in the think level, it's more how-to information, you know, educational type stuff is what they're looking for. And the do, well, now they're more aware of it, and it's how do we convince them? How do we convince them to take the action? And in delight, well, they could have been active candidates that have landed in your ATS at some point, or they're people that are in a talent community, not a talent pool. I hate calling it a talent pool, because what happens when you're swimming in the pool and you get tired and you're just left there, you're going to end up drowning. And we don't want to drown these lovely candidates that we've put there. But they might have been active and then they've gone passive. They might not have got the job. They might have just ended up in a database and you haven't nurtured it properly. So what we've got to think about there is, what do we do to nurture them, and how do we turn them from being passive into active? So your databases, your ATSs, your CRMs have active candidates in that. Sorry, active candidates, yes, but they also have passive candidates in. So have you thought about how to reignite them? Probably, potentially, a huge missed opportunity. But that marketing funnel is really important, because what we're doing is we're now challenging ourselves to say, do we understand the persona? And now do we understand the questions and the thoughts and the objections and the future pains and considerations going on in their minds, that we could maybe put things in front of them that help them with them to get which creates a stimulus. Remember the stimulus in the ZMOT, and then brings them towards us through that 0 moment of truth. A couple of really good questions that we like to think about is, one of the things, as I say, is, well, what do they go to bed worrying about at night? When they go to bed and they can't sleep, I'm terrible, by the way. When it comes to traveling, can't sleep anywhere. But when they go to bed, what is it that's on their mind that they're worrying about? What are those future challenges? And what are they getting frustrated with? What are the professional problems they have today, this week, next month, 12 months, 2 years away? Think about those things, the things that might go on in the cybersecurity world, the IT world, or the marketing world. How's that changed? Everybody wants digital people at the moment. The world's gone digital crazy. All our clients are going, Dave, how do we connect with digital genii? And obviously, because we're in the digital world, we have fun playing around with that, but everybody wants them. What are they measured on? What's the pain points? Digital people have to learn loads. They're constantly having to embrace new stuff. So one of the things there is, how can you help put that new stuff in front of them? Think about how your target personas are measured. What are they measured on? Weekly, monthly, yearly? How could you help them improve those measurements, the KPIs of their professional roles? What makes them look good? What makes them successful? And what would make their life easier? So they're just some probing questions that you need to ask yourself about your target personas. And out of that will come questions, ideas that you might then be able to creatively help, and it creates awareness if we see that content at the right place to bring them towards you as a brand. And here's another thing, is kind of obvious this is, ask them. I know it's unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. You would be amazed how many people, when they speak to candidates, and they, and these can be passive or active. In fact, active more so in a way, because you're having conversations, there's something happening, they're in a recruitment process. Why not just ask them at some point in the conversation, what's going on in the world that you're worried about at the moment? What is the one thing that you're really interested in right now that you'd like more information about? And what you're doing is you're building this question base. So we actually often talk about with our clients are, what are the top 100 questions that your candidates are asking, both in passive and active mode? Because in there is gold dust. And here's the thing with voice of the customer. Don't listen to replies. Stephen Covey's famous as saying many, many years ago in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the problem with communication is we listen to reply, not to understand. So let's ask questions to understand what those candidates are looking for and what the passive talent is interested in. So voice of the customer, think about the signposts that you can pull up and listen. This is something that LinkedIn can provide to you. And this is quite a cool little tool, this, because I was speaking at one of their events, I think it was probably last year now, to be honest. And I was like, can you get data on, can you cut up the segmentation of where someone works and the type of job function that they're in and what's on their mind? And what we can see here is what's important to candidates when considering a job. And in here is gold dust, again, voice of the customer, giving us some more validation of what's important to them in their world. Some other places that you can go online are discussion groups, and go into LinkedIn and look at the groups. Here's a couple of ones that we use when we're looking for information on what is important to a target audience or personas. So on the left we have Quora, and Quora is basically a place where people go and ask questions, and you can go in there and start asking questions, look at topics that might be important to people in IT, and you can see all the hot topics that are going on. It's almost a feeding frenzy for content ideas in there. So think about your top 100 questions in Quora are some answers and thoughts that will give you some creative thought in terms of how you can attract passive people. And then you've got All Top there, which is a blog aggregator. So you can go in there and you can look for the themes around the blogs that might be important to your target audience and go and see what's hot and what's not. And actually another crafty trick is if you go into the articles there in All Top, or if you go into Quora, the people who are commenting, they could be passive candidates right there having a chat. You could step into the pub that is Quora, you could step into the pub that is All Top, buy them a tricky drink and be nice. Don't offer them a job yet, just be nice. But that's a cool little place. Now this is awesome, and I know what you're thinking. Is that one of Google Dave's long lost relatives? I know he looks a cool guy, he's got a great pair of glasses. I know it's not my dad. So you pesky people out there having a laugh, it's definitely not my dad, but this tool is cool. It's called answerthepublic.com. And other than being a cool guy, what this thing does is you can type in any subject into the bar there, and it does a search and it links into Google, and it comes back and it gives you all the questions that are asked in Google around that subject matter. So we love this. We love this for any talent attraction campaign, any employer brand campaign, in fact, any B2B, B2C stuff that we might be working on as well. This is great for helping us build those top 100 questions, especially the sort of top of funnel educational type questions that might be on, in this case, a passive person's mind. It gives us real good insights. And this is just an example, like working at Google. There's things in here about, you know, what's it like to work there, but there's people talking about stress and all kinds of stuff. And when you see this, you go, Christ, yeah, you know, maybe people who are considering now to work at Google, look at all these things that are on their mind. And then you start to think is, well, where do they get the answers from? They get their answers in that ZMOT, in up to 6 hours and 14.5 sources of information. So my question to you is are you providing them with brand-led content that engages them and attracts them and pulls them towards you? So answerthepublic.com, check it out. It's a really cool tool, and no, it's definitely not my dad. The one question that really finds good stuff is, why did you almost not? So not why did you, but why did you almost not? Why did you almost not read that blog? Why did you almost not come back to the website? Why did you almost not apply for the job? Why did you almost not take the job? What was it you couldn't find you were looking for? So the why almost not is so often much better than the why did you. So give that a go. Get your recruiters, get your team speaking to candidates, find out those top 100 questions and ask them, why did you almost not? And suddenly you'll build now these persona questions, and then the trick is how are we going to use it? How are we going to use it to attract people towards us? Because now we understand them. You know, I said we're going to walk through a process. Now we started to understand them. We're building a picture of what's important to these passive candidates. Now we need to attract them. So the first thing is where do they live? Where do they go online? You know, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. But there's also lots of other places they hang out. So Quora, for example, Stack Overflow, if it's IT people, Stack Overflow, GitHub, absolutely. What I can tell you as well, which is a really interesting piece of work that we did with for developers, programmers and systems architects, the guys, the techie people who are looking for new ways of using technology and it being applied, or even new technology or ways of coding, a lot of them go to SlideShare. I know, and it was quite weird when we were doing this, we run these workshops with this client. Actually, it was really interesting because we were like, okay, there's lots of passive candidates in SlideShare looking for ways of using tech. How do we use that channel? And how do we use the influencers and the real intelligent techie people in this organization to start providing their content into SlideShare to make friends and start to engage with passive talent? And it's worked really well. So think about what channels these are, because we need to be in the channels where these candidates are. Now, what's quite interesting is when I look at these that are on the screen, obviously talent in LinkedIn, but Facebook's a really interesting one, because what happens is, and I still get this now and I can't believe it, we get clients come in and they go, yeah, but I'm not sure my candidates are in Facebook. And I go, are you for real? There's 1.6 billion people in Facebook and you're not sure they're in there. But the challenge is, how do we engage them on Facebook? Because we don't just want to throw jobs at people because they don't care. They don't give a shit. We've already talked about that. What we've got to do is put something in front of them that's of interest to them, that creates the stimulus that then begins to engage with the content and brings them towards the brand. So think about the channels where they exist, and you need to think about how you're going to network and seed and amplify content into those channels. And essentially what we're really talking about is your passive candidates live in a digital ecosystem. Okay, so there's lots of little places and other, where they live online. And what we have to do is we have to keep building the brand and build the content and keep putting it in front of them in different places to start creating that mind shelf and that awareness in the passive candidate's mind. So here we've got like a circle, and you've got social, SEO, experience and content, and they all influence each other. Now SEO, we'll talk about that shortly, briefly, but SEO is hugely important. Get visibility in Google for the content you provide when passive candidates go looking for the information that we've already talked about. And there's lots of different things that we can do there, but essentially when we create content that helps passive candidates, well, when they're in research mode, where do they go at ZMOT? They definitely go to Google. We need to give a great experience, which means we need to give the right content, the right place at the right time. Content must be focused on topic models, not just keywords. So think about the topics, the top 100 questions. And if they really like the content, they'll share it in their social communities. And typically, especially with techie people, especially in the likes of Stack Overflow, GitHub, and SlideShare, they tend to have people come towards them that are just like themselves. So if they share some of your content, that content gets amplified to passive candidates of people just like those. So there is this digital ecosystem at play, and we need to think about how we use that to attract and engage passive candidates. And once you've done all of those things, this is like a creative mood board that we do back at Ph.Attraction. And what we have here, this is just a very, very simple example of someone who wants to attract chefs. Now, there's 25,000 chef jobs in London alone. That's a lot of cooking, a lot of cooking. Now, and also they move around a lot. So we did all the persona stuff. We got the top 100 questions. We found out what's important to them, what they like, what they don't like. And what we've done is we've created a lot of ideas and concepts that matter to chefs throughout the funnel. So I just really wanted to show you an example. We've got like chef humor, we've got signature dishes, we've got what goes on behind the kitchen, what to do with ingredients. Kind of, you know, obvious stuff really, but we know this is important to them. And then we take those ideas and bring them alive in different visual assets and content and video and all this different stuff. And then we amplify it into the right channels. That's where these passive candidates would live. So that just gives you a flavour of, you do all that work, and now we go into a track phase, we're coming up with the ideas, and this is like a creative mood board of concepts that answers those questions. So we take those questions and we go, how do we make that more creative? How do we make that content live longer, create content cascades to keep it going and keep engaging it, etc., etc. So I thought I'd just show you that because it just gives you a flavour of the type of stuff that you can do and what it might look like. Looking back at ZMOT, now we can see the stage, so initial stimulus, research, job application, and they start the job. There are different types of content that work at different stages. So we can see from initial stimulus, something entertaining or inspiring often gets their attention there, makes them think, oh, hold on a second, that's good, you know, it gets my attention, it brings me towards you. Then we've got educate, and then we've got convince, and then we've got support. So there are different themes of content that work as we go through the ZMOT. So take the ideas, take the 100 questions, solve the pain points, come up with the concepts, and then think, well, do we need to make that inspirational, entertaining to get attention? Maybe, maybe not. How do we build educational content in there? Because we're going to keep helping them, maybe change the perception, help them with their future challenges. Then, as they get closer to maybe making that, clicking that apply button, how do we convince them? How do we bring them to convert? Once we've got the application, how are we supporting them? How are we supporting them? And I'd actually say, how are we engaging them and how do we nurture them? Here's a really cool piece of research from Buzzsumo. So still thinking about content, because what happens is, when we're thinking about creating content in terms of passive candidates, a lot of people just go nuts and create lots of content, but actually that's not quite right. And they go, oh, well, we'll create a blog that might be, 500 words long. That's no good. This is a piece of research from Buzzsumo. It's a brilliant tool. Go and check it out. And they have some amazing data on how people engage and share content. And what we see here is if you look from the left to the right, in most cases, whether you're in finance, marketing, travel, news, whatever sector or industry you work in, what we see is that the blogs that get the most engagement are the ones with more words in. So you've got like 2,000 to 3,000 and 3,000 to 10,000 words. Now, you're not going to be able to create a 3,000-4,000 word blog every day or even every week. But what we're saying here is actually it's the longer pieces of content that get more engagement. That's important. That's important. Here we see it in a graphic and we can see how it's broken down into sectors. But what we're seeing here is it's content that adds value. And actually, I think part of the statistic is the best engaged content online takes 6.2 minutes to read. Now, at first, when you hear that stat, you go, bloody hell, 6.2 minutes, that's quite a long time. But ask yourself, why does it take 6.2 minutes? It takes 6.2 minutes because it's bloody worth reading in the first place. They're engaged with it and they keep reading it. So what I want you to do is with these passive candidates, when you're creating content that matters to them and helps them, don't just throw anything up there. Think about what you create and invest time and resource and value into it, because it's that content that's going to get engaged. If it's just a short thing, it's not going to work. But if it's a really great piece of content, they're going to engage with it. Now they're going to start remembering you, and they may just share it into communities just like themselves of more passive candidates. So have a little think about that. It really is surprising when you put effort into a piece of content, how much more traction it can get, but it does need an audience. So, you know, looking back to those channels where your candidates live, these passive people live, you need to think about where they are and actively network within those channels. You know, you're not just going to throw a piece of content out and it's going to happen. We need to work it. We need to work it. And here what we can see, this is quite interesting, same piece of research. We see where the content gets most engaged or shared during times of the week by sector. And what's interesting is, if you look on Saturday and Sunday, everybody's out drinking on Saturday and Sunday, they're in bed and they're with their families because there's less engagement. And if you look at IT, only 2% of engagement on a Saturday and Sunday, so they're definitely chilling out. They're probably doing techie stuff somewhere in the dark room. But what we can see is where the green spots are, they're the points when actually there's more of that audience active and engaging online. So that then starts you to think, hold on a second, there's probably more passive candidates active in those times. What are we doing to take advantage of that? Are we seeding content at that time? Are we actively networking online? And it's working, which means we actually do have to work in these channels, by the way, to think about it. But it's a really interesting piece of research, that quality content, add value, answer questions, top 100, seed it at the times when your audience is there. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it, when you say it like that? And we want it visible. So where do people start a search? Well, in this case, where do people start a job search? But actually, where do people start a search for information where they want something? They go to Google, and you want to be visible in Google. Google by far is the best search engine in the world. Clearly, we all use it and we find what we're looking for when we want it. Now, here's a screenshot of Google. The top is paid search. About 20% of traffic clicks into there. The blue bit, which is like the holy grail, and people always come up to us going, how do we get to the top of Google? About 80% of traffic goes there. And you want your content that solves problems for passive candidates to be found there. What I can tell you is, and we know this from our clients, SEO, if you invest in time in SEO, and don't forget SEO is also the digital ecosystem, so great content that matters to your target passive candidates, that gives a good experience when they get there and is shared socially. If you get that right over time, it doesn't happen overnight, but if you get it right over time, it can be 40 times, that's right, 40 times more powerful than social media to help you generate applications. That's a hell of a stat, but it can be. Social media can help you seed content in passive candidates to a demographic at certain stages. But SEO is all over the attribution path. As people search around and look for information, they go backwards and forwards in and out of websites. SEO can be a real hard hitter for you in the world of finding passive candidates and helping with ROI, helping with ROI. Something that we do with Nationwide is we use their blog for the voice of their candidates. And what we do is we take the target personas and we interview their personas within the organization. So let's say the techie person. So we look for the influential leaders, if you like, within Nationwide, and we say, we want to interview you on the subject matters of tech and how it's changing and what's coming and what are the future challenges you see. And then we produce that and it goes in to the blog at Nationwide. But because Nationwide gets lots of visibility online, those questions and answers start to appear in Google when people go looking. So we're using the influencers in the organization. We're not asking them to write anything. We're interviewing them on thoughts and ideas that are important to them in their world, because we know that the passive candidates will be interested in those things as well. And when they go looking for this information, bingo, they find Nationwide. And we do that in different job functions. So the blog becomes a community for specific job functions to help us find and answer through interviewing our Nationwide people of those top 100 questions and then amplifying it into the channels where that target passive audience is. So just trying to get more from less basically, but doing it in a smart way. You can amplify this content. So this is an example in Facebook. We have what's called Facebook dark posts or custom audiences. So what you can do is you can upload a database that you might have, a candidate database. So let's take your ATS. Get all that out, LinkedIn, get all that out. You can put it into Facebook, it will find those people. But you can then do a lookalike campaign and say, can you find me people that look like those profiles, and I now want to amplify and market the content towards them, not the job, the content that helps those people with the challenges that they may face, targeting passive candidates and starting to bring them towards you. And you can do this in other channels as well. So it's a real powerful tool. This is Gmail sponsored promotions. So you can target people by the keywords that are in their Gmail emails. So think about what might be in those passive candidates, things that you might target in terms of keywords, and you can start to amplify messages in front of them. Something that, and I don't know why this is, but a lot of people in the recruitment space don't do remarketing. So we bring lots and lots of people to us. We start bringing these passive candidates in. They start reading our content. They land on the website, so they appear into the careers website. It might be the home page, it might be they look at a function, they look at a job detail page, they might read a blog. And what we want to do, when they've done that, and if they just leave, so imagine somebody reads the blog I've just explained at Nationwide. So somebody lands into Nationwide, they're looking for a question, they're looking to answer a question, future technology, they see this blog, or we've amplified that blog into Facebook. That techie person goes, oh, that's interesting. Clicks on the link, lands into the careers website of Nationwide, into the blog. Oh, yeah, I like that. Doesn't apply for the job and leaves. Okay. What remarketing does is, it then follows that person around on different websites. You've probably seen this. You've probably seen remarketing. Christmas, you've got to be careful with the kids. Because what happens is you go searching, in fact, make sure no kids are watching. Okay, cool. So what happens is, when you go searching and you're doing your Santa stuff and you're on Amazon and you're all these different sites, what happens is, if you don't buy, you start seeing these adverts following you around on specific websites. Now, if the kids go on the computer afterwards, the buggers know what you bought them for Christmas, so you've got to be careful at Christmas. But joking aside, remarketing is brilliant, because what happens is, he's landed on the blog, or she has, they've left, and then the ad starts to follow them round. And it keeps touching the candidate on the shoulder. You know, hey Dave, you know, we saw you like that blog. Here's another blog that you might like, and here's something else you might be interested in. And how you manage that campaign and how you rotate the ads and the message that you're sending is really important. But what it does is it keeps your brand and your content on the mind shelf of that passive candidate and encourages them to come back. And it goes round and round and round. So remarketing is actually really clever. It's huge in B2C. We use it massively for e-commerce websites. So we've got to start thinking about how do we create and how do we keep awareness of passive candidates of the content we can help them with and keep our brand on the mind show? So remarketing, now that we do all this hard work to get them in, if they haven't taken the action we want and we haven't converted them yet, let's keep touching them on the shoulder. So remarketing, check that out. Check that out. This is a nice little idea. Personalized creative outreach. So this is something that Apple did a few years ago. They wanted to hire 2 designers and they identified the top 50. The top 50? I keep saying top 100 in this webinar, so let's say top 50. It might have been a few more. But they identified the top 50 designers on the planet and they made bespoke iPods for them with their own personalised tunes, and they were beautiful, and they were in boxes and all this, and they sent them to the designers and they hired 4. So this was creative outreach. We've got a project on at the moment, and I can't say too much about it, but it involves virtual reality being sent to the house of some of the greatest innovators on the planet. It's creative outreach. So sometimes to be creative, to engage passive talent, the smart players, and especially probably high levels and exec levels, is who are they? Let's do the intelligence and actually find out who they are, a little bit like MI5, and then think about what can we create to get their attention, to create that stimulus. Apple did this really, really well. So creative outreach, it doesn't just have to be digital. Retro outreach is pretty cool at the moment. Pretty cool. So there's we thought about attraction. The next thing is the science of home affiliate. So this is about how do we build communities and how do we keep the communities of passive talent engaged. And this is something now that a lot of the clients we're working with, they're investing a lot, into, well, what does it look like? What do we need in terms of our operational model, in terms of managing and nurturing these communities, and also what's the technology that allows us to do it. And I'm glad to say that they're thinking about the people first and then the actual operational model and technology second. And actually it used to be the other way around, so this is a really good thing. And one of the things that's dead important is eat. Now, it's not about eating burgers or sending them takeaways. This is about expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Now, we win here twice because Google actually uses this acronym and says, if you create content on things that delivers expertise, it will build your authoritativeness and people will begin to trust you, and so will Google, so you'll gain more visibility. But actually, let's think about it. Let's take the nationwide scenario we used before. We are using the experts in nationwide. We're interviewing them on content. We're thinking about future challenges, and we're building authority online through that content. And over time, that builds trust with an audience. It's exactly the same with a community. How are your teams set up to manage your CRM, the segmentations within your database? How have you set that up? And are they managing job functions, persona groups? What expertise, authoritativeness and trust can they provide that helps those passive candidates with answers to their questions? So it's a really simple acronym, EAT, expertise, authoritativeness and trust. Really good one. Now here's an example of a concept we've got that takes this a bit further in terms of community, and it's a Trojan horse of passive talent, and we're doing this more and more now. Now it does take a bit more investment, but what we're doing here is this is an example for teachers. So teachers, as a persona target, their biggest pain point is A, B. In fact, it's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because the way the grading's changed in England. But anyway, they're obsessed with how well their kids do in exams. So when it's August, you've probably got friends on Facebook and they're like panicking about the exam results and all this kind of stuff. Well, they're panicking because they want the kids to do well. And kids do well if they deliver world-class lesson plans. So when they do a lesson on physics, say, the kids need to be engaged, and they do that with great lesson plans. Now, what we found out with secondary school teachers was they're not very good at sharing them. And that includes their friends in the schools. And they might be connected with other schools. We work with an academy group of 46. They don't share lesson plans. And we're like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And the community's not helping itself. So we were like, wouldn't it be cool if we could create a community online where the teachers can submit their lesson plans, and actually there's a place to share, and actually as a brand we can facilitate that. Okay, that's a really cool idea. And then we're like, why don't we get the teachers to rate the lesson plans? And they're actually rating how good the teachers are at lesson plans. But this isn't for recruitment purposes. This is to help the community. But actually it's not. It's a Trojan horse of passive talent. It's actually rank and file in itself. So think about, what are these problems? How can we build this community and share content that matters to themselves? And how can we be the facilitator for that? So that takes the whole science of homophily and attracting passive candidates to a whole new level. And then that becomes your first point for when you're looking to fill a vacancy, because in there is passive talent. And what we're doing is we're nurturing throughout the ZMOT. We can take that content and we're nurturing it throughout the phase of ZMOT. What pieces of content or what assets have you got that you can keep putting out there that move them from passive to active? So finally, and I know your tea's probably gone cold, you're a little bit parched, a little bit like myself, but that's okay, because it might just be getting close to jingle time for me and a cheeky little Peroni after this. So then we do all this hard work, put all this effort in to get these passive candidates to come towards us, then we've got to convert them. And we land them into job pages that look like this. I know, they're not working very hard to convert them. And actually, it's not just about that. It's, you know, it's like, what does it feel like? How quick is it acting? But this job, this is like, how are we convincing them now to apply? We're actually engineering for dissatisfaction. And no, that's definitely not me, by the way. That's definitely not me. But if we look in the e-commerce world and how they do this brilliantly, they do all this work to turn a suspect into a potential customer. This is made.com, and this is what a product page looks like for them. Now, I'm going to walk through the framework of how this page is outlined and how it connects emotionally and rationally, convinces someone and converts them to buy a red beanbag. So this target persona, it's a female. She's probably 26 to 32. They understand their target audience, the persona, and she's probably just moving in to her first house with her partner. And she's pretty cool. She's wearing a beanbag, and what we see there is emotionally led content. Her lipstick even matches the beanbag, and we see the story, we see the different photos there, and we see it all in situ. What does it feel like to buy this beanbag? And it's just at the top. We scan a page, top, down, and go to the right. So then the next chunk of content, again, is emotional. There's even a video of her having fun playing with the beanbag. So it's helping convince, it's by giving you emotional content, but it's actually answering the questions that's going on in this persona's mind and giving them answers in various formats. The content's in video, it's in written word, it's in imagery. And then on the right-hand side, there's some rational content. What are the rational thoughts that are going on in this persona's mind? Well, it might be, they go, but will it fit in my room? So here's all the information placed to help convince the emotional part of your brain you're making the right choice. And then just in case, here is user-generated images of people who've bought the beanbag, who love it and they love it in the house. And just because they know that this lady, this persona might be thinking of starting a family, they put a baby on one to help convince and convert that person to become a customer. So my challenge is, we work hard to bring passive candidates to us and active, but how hard do we work really to convert them? Do you really work hard enough to convert people? We're working with SAP at the moment, and we're doing conversion rate optimization tests purely on content and job detail pages, and we're split testing. 5%, 10%, 20%, 50% improvements on the current conversion rates can mean tens of thousands of more applications globally a month. So do we work hard enough to convince? Do we work hard enough to convert? So these are the things that we really, really need to think about. So hopefully I've given you some creative thought, a bit of a process to work through, triggered some stuff off in your mind, and go, actually, it's maybe not as hard as we think to actually think about a passive candidate, how we can go out there, think about them, listen to them, and then create content that matters and actually gives value to them to bring us towards the brand. So I've really enjoyed that. I think it might be time for a cheeky prony. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the webinar. And you know what I'd love more is anything you'd like to know more about in the world of recruitment marketing, candidate experience, employer brand, and maybe, just maybe, if the lovely people at Social Talent invite me back, we can do another one. Bye for now.